You were taught to believe that if you're successful, faithful, and making everyone proud, you must be living God's will for your life. But what if I told you that's the exact lie keeping millions of Christians trapped in beautiful prisons? Dr. Clyde Wilson Jr. was the perfect success story. Harvard-educated physician, Citizen of the Year, beautiful family, six-figure income, respected in his church. Every Sunday, people congratulated him. His father beamed with pride. But every Monday morning, Clyde felt like a fraud, because deep in his soul, what kept him awake wasn't a medical breakthrough. It was a melody he'd never written, a stage he'd never stood on, a purpose he'd buried to become the doctor his father always wanted. Myles Munroe said something that would have saved Clyde decades of quiet desperation. When you don't know your purpose, abuse is inevitable, even if that abuse looks like success. And here's the terrifying part. Clyde isn't rare. He's the norm. You might be sitting in his chair right now, successful, faithful, applauded, and secretly dying inside. What if everything you've achieved is someone else's dream wearing your name? If you ever felt like a hypocrite in your own life, performing excellence in a role that doesn't fit your soul, you're not broken. You're hearing God's whisper that you were designed for something specific, and it's not what's on your current business card. In the next few minutes, through Myles Munroe's biblical framework and the tragic story of Clyde Wilson Jr., you're going to receive a diagnostic tool that reveals whether you're living your divine assignment or acting in someone else's script. And more importantly, you'll discover the pathway back to God's original design for your life. If you want to discover more about divine purpose and living the life God specifically created you for, subscribe to this channel where we explore the transformative teachings of kingdom thinkers like Myles Munroe, who help believers break free from religious performance into authentic calling. Let me paint you a picture that might feel uncomfortably familiar. Clyde Wilson Jr. wakes up at 5:47 a.m. in his colonial home. By 6:30, he's reviewing patient charts over coffee his wife prepared exactly how he likes it. By 7:15, he's in his Mercedes heading to hospital where his name is on a bronze plaque. Dr. Clyde Wilson Jr., Department of Cardiology. His colleagues respect him. His patients trust him. His father, the man who worked 3 jobs to put him through medical school, calls him my greatest achievement. But here's what nobody sees. Every single morning in that Mercedes, Clyde grips the steering wheel and whispers to himself, "I can't do this for another 30 years. Because what Clyde really wants, what actually makes his heart race, isn't a successful cardiac procedure. It's a piano. It's a stage. It's teaching kids in underserved neighborhoods how music saved his life when he was 12. But that dream got buried under a headstone that read, impractical, ungrateful, foolish. Myles Munroe would look at Clyde's life and diagnose immediately. This is purpose abuse. Now wait, you might be thinking, how could success be abuse? Here's Munroe's revolutionary biblical insight from Genesis 1. God created everything with specific purpose before it existed. The sun's purpose isn't to be a really bright moon. A hammer's purpose isn't to be a fancy screwdriver. And your purpose isn't to be a successful version of someone else's dream. Munroe taught, when purpose is not known, abuse is inevitable, even if that abuse is decorated with awards and applause. Think about it this way. Imagine you buy an expensive smartphone, but because you don't know what it's for, you use it as a really expensive doorstop. Technically, it's functioning. It's holding the door open successfully, but it's being abused because it's not fulfilling its manufacturer's intent. That phone could change your life, communicate across continents, access human knowledge, create art, but instead it's just holding a door. That's Clyde. That's potentially you. Successfully holding doors you were never designed to hold. Here's what breaks my heart about Clyde's story. He wasn't rebelling against God. He was trying to honor his father, provide for his family, serve his community. All noble things. But Munroe discovered something critical in Scripture. God gave you purpose before you were born, Jeremiah 1 verse 5, Psalm 139 verse 16. That means your divine assignment isn't determined by family expectations, cultural definitions of success, or even what you're currently good at doing. Your parents might have shaped your childhood, but they didn't design your destiny. Only your Creator did. Clyde won Citizen of the Year. The same week, he started seeing a therapist for depression. The trophy sat on his mantle while he sat in his car in the hospital parking garage, fighting the urge to just drive away and never come back. Success without purpose doesn't feel like victory. It feels like a life sentence. Now, you might not be a doctor living your father's dream, but before you dismiss Clyde's story, let me ask you 3 questions Munroe would ask. Do you feel more relief when things get canceled than when they succeed? Do you find yourself envying people with less successful but seemingly more fulfilled lives? Do you perform excellence publicly while feeling empty privately? If you answered yes to even one of those, you need what comes next, because Munroe developed a biblical framework rooted in how God designed creation to help you identify whether you're living your divine assignment or successfully performing in someone else's. He called it discovering your purpose fingerprint. I call it the Clyde Wilson Jr. test. 10 signs. If you recognize 7 or more, you're not living your dream. You're acting in someone else's play. Let's find out. When Clyde won Citizen of the Year, you know what he felt? Nothing. Not humility. Not gratitude. Just nothing. Like watching someone else receive an award through a window. He smiled for photos, gave the gracious speech, but internally he was detached, thinking, this should matter to me. Why doesn't this matter to me? Munroe would say, because those aren't your trophies. They're your father's, your culture's, your religious communities, but not yours. Here's the biblical principle. In Matthew 25, Jesus tells a parable of the talents. Notice, the master doesn't celebrate the servant who successfully managed someone else's talents. He celebrates those who multiplied what was specifically entrusted to them. Your achievements in someone else's assignment don't register in your soul as true victory because your spirit knows, this isn't what God entrusted to me. You ever notice how some people can accomplish something small by cultural standards? Teach one kid to read, plant a community garden, write a song nobody hears, and they're radiantly fulfilled? While you accomplish something big and feel empty. That's not ingratitude. That's your soul screaming, wrong assignment. Sign number 2, you feel like a fraud even when you're excellent. Clyde was objectively excellent at cardiology, top of his residency class, published research, saved actual lives, but he felt like an imposter every single day, not because he lacked skill, because he lacked alignment. Munroe taught that God designed you with what he called domain, a specific area of creation where you're meant to exercise dominion. Genesis 1 verse 28. When you operate outside your domain, even excellence feels fraudulent. It's like being a professional basketball player who's secretly a world-class violinist. You can dunk successfully, but your soul knows you're supposed to be playing Vivaldi. The American church has unfortunately taught many believers, just be faithful where you are. That's partially true. God honors faithfulness. But Munroe pushed back biblically. Be faithful, yes, but be faithful discovering and moving toward your purpose, not just faithful performing someone else's. Fraudulence isn't about lack of skill. It's about lack of divine assignment. Clyde could perform a perfect cardiac catheterization while simultaneously feeling like a complete fake, because technical competence without purpose alignment is just sophisticated slavery. You're excellent at something that's killing you. Sign number 3. Other people's excitement about your life exhausts you. Here's a specific scene that haunted Clyde. At a dinner party, someone would say, you must love saving lives every day. And Clyde would have perform enthusiasm. Oh yes, it's so rewarding. While internally screaming, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. The gap between how enthusiastic others are about your life and how you actually feel about it is a measure of purpose misalignment. Munroe said, when you're in purpose, you don't need external motivation. The assignment itself energizes you. Notice in Scripture, when God called Moses, Exodus 3, Jeremiah 1, Paul, Acts 9, their initial resistance eventually transformed into unshakable passion, not because they manufactured enthusiasm, but because divine assignment carries intrinsic fuel. If you're running on fumes, needing constant pep talks, motivational content, therapeutic shopping, weekend escapes just to survive another week, you're likely succeeding at the wrong thing. Clyde needed 3 cups of coffee and a pep talk just to walk into the hospital. Meanwhile, on the rare Saturday he volunteered at a youth music program, he'd wake up early without an alarm, energized, fully alive. Same man, different assignment. Your energy distribution reveals your purpose direction. If family gatherings celebrating your achievements feel like endurance tests, if LinkedIn congratulations make you want to delete your account, if you're more exhausted after success than after failure, your soul is waving a red flag. This isn't it. This is what God made me for. Let's keep going. The next signs get even more specific. Sign number 4. You constantly compare your behind the scenes to others' highlight reels. Clyde had a peculiar habit. He'd scroll through social media looking at musicians, not famous ones, just regular people posting their small gigs, their homemade recordings, their joy. And he'd feel this toxic mixture of envy and self-loathing. They're not even that good, he'd think, and they're happier than I'll ever be. Munroe understood this dynamic biblically. Comparison is the thief of purpose. But here's the twist. Clyde wasn't comparing apples to apples. He was comparing his internal emptiness in medicine to their external joy in music. That's not fair comparison. That's your soul showing you where it wants to go. Paul writes in Galatians 6 verse 4, each one should test their own actions. Then they can take pride in themselves alone without comparing themselves to someone else. But here's what Munroe added. You can only test your actions properly when you know your divine assignment. Otherwise, you're testing how well you're playing someone else's position. Clyde would see a mediocre pianist and feel crushing envy, not because he wanted to be mediocre, but because he wanted to be alive. That pianist's mediocre was authentic. Clyde's excellence was counterfeit. When you find yourself obsessively comparing your life to people in completely different fields, different income brackets, different success levels, pay attention. Your spirit is trying to show you a direction, not make you feel bad. Sign number 5. Success brings relief, not joy. Here's the moment that almost broke Clyde completely. He successfully performed an incredibly complex surgery. The family was in tears of gratitude. Colleagues were congratulating him. And you know what he felt? Relief. Thank God that's over. Not joy, not fulfillment, not I was born for this. Just relief that he didn't fail. Munroe taught. When you're in purpose, success feels like destiny fulfilling itself. When you're out of purpose, success feels like dodging a bullet. Big difference. Think about David facing Goliath, 1 Samuel 17. When he won, it wasn't relief, it was confirmation. This is who I am. This is what God made me for. Every victory in your divine assignment should feel like evidence, not luck. If your career wins feel more like, I survived another performance review, then this is my God-given domain. You're succeeding in the wrong arena. Clyde's most successful professional year was his most suicidal. Because external success without internal alignment doesn't produce joy. It produces cognitive dissonance, so severe it can destroy you. Sign number 6. You experience post-success emptiness. The night Clyde won Citizen of the Year, after the ceremony, after congratulations, after his father's proud speech, Clyde sat in his home office at 2 a.m., staring at the award and whispered, "Is this all there is?" Post-success emptiness is a clinical sign of purpose misalignment. When you achieve what you're supposed to achieve and feel nothing, or worse, despair. Munroe explained it this way. Your soul was designed by God for a specific assignment. When you complete someone else's assignment, even perfectly, your soul doesn't register it as completion. It's like finishing someone else's puzzle, technically done, but you feel no ownership, no satisfaction. Scripture shows us this in Ecclesiastes. Solomon achieved everything culture defines as success, wealth, wisdom, pleasure, legacy, and concluded, meaningless. Meaningless. Ecclesiastes 1 verse 2. Why? Because he pursued outcomes without pursuing God's specific purpose for his life. Listen, if you're recognizing yourself in these signs, I need you to do something right now. Hit the like button so more people trapped in beautiful prisons can find their way to freedom. And comment purpose. If you're committed to discovering what God actually designed you for, not just succeeding at what others expect. The weight of this is hitting you, isn't it? You're successful, you're faithful, you're making people proud, and you're dying inside. That's not ingratitude. That's not weakness. That's your soul's alarm system telling you, we're off course. Let's go deeper. The next signs reveal the relational cost of living someone else's dream. Sign number 7. You resent the very people you're trying to please. Here's the part of Clyde's story that reveals the insidious nature of purpose abuse. He started resenting his father, the man who sacrificed everything for his education, the man he was trying to honor, because every time his father said, "I'm so proud of you, son," Clyde heard, "I'm so proud you became who I needed you to be." Munroe addressed this painful dynamic directly. Honor your parents, yes, but you cannot sacrifice your divine assignment to fulfill their unfulfilled dreams. That's not honor. That's emotional hostage-taking. Strong words, but biblically grounded. Ephesians 6 verses 2 to 3 says, "Honor your father and mother," but notice, Jesus also said in Matthew 10 verse 37, "Anyone who loves their father or mother more than me is not worthy of me." What does that mean practically? It means when family expectations conflict with divine assignment, God's purpose wins. Clyde's resentment wasn't rebellious ingratitude. It was a natural byproduct of self-abandonment. When you continuously betray yourself to please others, you eventually resent them for accepting your betrayal. You might be experiencing this right now. Your spouse wants you to keep the stable job. Your parents want you to maintain the family legacy. Your church community wants you to serve in ways that drain you, and you're starting to resent the very people you love. Not because they're bad people, but because maintaining their approval requires you to murder your purpose daily. Sign number 8. Your prayers feel mechanical, not desperate. Clyde went to church every Sunday, prayed before meals, led family devotions. But here's what he confessed to his therapist. "I haven't had a real conversation with God in 15 years. I perform prayers. I don't pray." Munroe taught something revolutionary about prayer and purpose. When you're in divine assignment, prayer becomes partnership with God in fulfilling that assignment. When you're out of purpose, prayer becomes religious obligation to a distant deity. Notice the prayers of people in Scripture walking in purpose. Moses interceding for Israel, Hannah desperate for Samuel, Paul pleading for the churches. These aren't mechanical repetitions. These are urgent conversations with God about the assignment He gave them. When was the last time you prayed with desperation, with genuine need for God's guidance in what you're doing? Or are your prayers more like reporting to a boss you're trying to keep satisfied? If your spiritual life feels like maintaining religious appearances rather than partner with God in world-changing assignment, your soul knows something your theology might be denying. You're not where God designed you to be. Sign number 9. You have success strategies but no legacy vision. Clyde had a comprehensive financial plan, retirement projections, investment portfolio. What he didn't have, any vision for what he wanted to be remembered for, because deep down he knew successful cardiologist who made his father proud wasn't the legacy his soul longed to leave. Munroe made a critical distinction. Success is about you, legacy is about others, and purpose connects them. When you fulfill your divine assignment, you automatically create legacy because you've given the world something only you could give. Look at Hebrews 11, the Hall of Faith. These people aren't remembered for being successful in conventional terms. They're remembered for fulfilling specific divine assignments that changed human history. Abel's offering, Noah's Ark, Abraham's faith journey, Moses' liberation, each one unique, each one irreplaceable. What's your irreplaceable contribution? Not your job title, not your income level, not your degrees. What can only exist in the world if you discover and fulfill your purpose? Clyde couldn't answer that question about cardiology. He could be replaced by 10,000 other competent doctors. But the music program he dreamed of creating for at-risk youth in a specific community, shaped by a specific story, that dies if he doesn't birth it. If you can't articulate a legacy vision that makes you weep with longing, you probably haven't discovered your purpose yet. You've just found ways to be successful at survival. One more sign. This one's the most dangerous. Sign number 10. You're waiting for permission to live. Here's the most heartbreaking part of Clyde's story, and maybe yours. He knew. He knew he was supposed to pursue music education. He knew his soul came alive teaching kids. He knew God had designed him for that specific assignment. But he was waiting for his father's blessing, waiting for financial security, waiting for the right time, waiting for someone to give him permission to live. Munroe would say, "You're waiting for permission from people who don't have authority over your divine assignment. The only permission you need came when God designed you with purpose before you were born. This is a final and most dangerous sign of living someone else's dream. You know the truth about your purpose, but you've given other people veto power over God's design." Clyde waited 47 years. 47 years of successful medicine. 47 years of dying slowly. And you know when he finally pursued music? After a massive heart attack at age 53. Ironically, his specialty, forced him to confront his mortality, lying in his own cardiac unit, being treated by his own colleagues. Clyde had an undeniable moment of clarity. "I've spent my entire life saving hearts while ignoring my own." He survived, recovered, and did something radical. He started the transition, not recklessly, not irresponsibly, but deliberately. He reduced his medical hours, started teaching music part-time, built slowly toward the life God designed. His father was disappointed. Some colleagues thought he'd lost his mind. His income dropped. But Clyde said something that captures Munroe's teaching perfectly. "I'd rather be broke and alive than wealthy and dead inside." Now listen carefully. Munroe's teaching isn't about irresponsible abandonment of current responsibilities. It's about responsible transition from purpose abuse to purpose fulfillment. Here's how Munroe taught the discovery process, rooted in 3 biblical diagnostic questions. First, what unquenchable passion keeps you up at night? Not hobbies, not escapes. What recurring thought can you not silence? For Clyde, it was music education for underserved youth. What is it for you? Write it down this week. What thought interrupts your successful life most often? Second, what problems make you angry? What injustice won't you tolerate? Munroe taught that your divine assignment often lives at the intersection of your passion and the world's pain. Clyde couldn't tolerate seeing talented kids with no access to music education. What breaks your heart in a way that demands action? Third, what do people naturally seek you out for? Not your job title. What do friends, family, even strangers ask for your help with? That's your purpose fingerprint. Clyde's friends didn't call him for medical advice nearly as often as they asked him to help their kids with music. Pay attention to what people see in you that your current life doesn't utilize. These 3 questions, unquenchable passion, righteous anger, natural seeking, reveal your purpose fingerprint. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is too theoretical. I have rent due. I understand the urgency. But here's Munroe's challenging question. How many more months will you just survive? How many more years will you successfully perform in the wrong assignment? Munroe grew up in poverty in the Bahamas. 11 siblings, marginalized neighborhood, no advantages. What he had was clarity of purpose. And that clarity opened doors education couldn't, attracted resources money couldn't buy. Start with 30 minutes daily this week. Answer those 3 questions honestly. In 6 months, you'll have clarity that changes the next 30 years. Your divine assignment isn't optional. The world is desperately waiting for what only you can give. Don't make it wait any longer while you successfully perform someone else's dream. Clyde waited 47 years. How many will you wait? You came here wondering if you're living someone else's dream. If you recognize 7 or more signs, you have your answer. And I know that answer might hurt. Success that feels like failure, achievements that feel empty, a life that looks blessed but feels cursed. But here's the good news Munroe would want you to hear. God's purpose for your life didn't expire because you've been off course. Divine assignment doesn't have a statute of limitations. The moment you turn toward it, provision follows. This week, your one action, 30 minutes daily answering those 3 diagnostic questions. Unquenchable passion, righteous anger, natural seeking. Your purpose fingerprint is there. Myles Munroe said, "The wealthiest place on earth is a cemetery, filled with unwritten books, unsung songs, undiscovered cures, dreams that died with their dreamers." Don't let your divine assignment die in you while you successfully perform someone else's script. The world is desperately waiting for what only you can give. Subscribe to continue discovering how to transition from religious performance to kingdom purpose. Next week, we're exploring the 5 lies religion told you about prosperity. Another message that will set you free. You were designed on purpose, for purpose. It's time to live it.